All right. Well,
All right, man.
segue.
I am gonna put myself on mute. I'll be back in.
Okay. So yeah, segue into that. Planning for the 2023 housing market. Um, if you've been watching the news and the feds and everything that's going on, what are they really saying? So I kind of compiled some quotes and just some very basic information, I guess, to help you plan for what's coming up over the next 12 months. Um, whether you're it's going to be okay or it's a housing crash type of person. I think that what some of these industry professionals are saying makes a lot of sense in preparing for a significant slowdown in the market, maybe some depreciation and things like that. So let's just look at a few things and kind of break it down a little bit. So this was a headline that came out in an article last week. It was in Mortgage News Daily, I believe. So the Fed to reset the U.S. housing market through a difficult correction. So that was, the title of the article. Now we had a quote in there from Jerome Powell. The deceleration in housing prices that we're seeing should help bring prices more closely in line with rents and other housing market fundamentals. And that's a good thing. So it appears to be excited about what's happening. For the longer term, what we need is supply and demand to get better aligned so that housing prices can go up at a reasonable level at a reasonable pace and that people can afford houses again. We in the housing market probably have to go through a correction to get back to that place. So they've already accepted this and truthfully are kind of pushing this way to reset the housing market. I mean, he's blatantly saying this is what we're doing and we feel okay about it. So we had Mark with Moodys Analytics. So more than half of the top 400 housing markets in the US are significantly overvalued by more than 25%. I think this will play out over the next couple of years and it will be through mid-decade until things bottom out. So they are predicting some decline in housing values. He's saying 25% is what they're estimating some of these housing markets are overvalued by. So, are they looking to reset the housing market by 25%, or if that's what they're predicting it's going to go back to? There's been a lot of rumblings everywhere about, it needs to go back to, a 2020 reset of where the housing market was then. And truthfully, that about hits that number. So we've got Rick Palacios. Clearly, the Fed's shift in word choice from June's housing needs a reset to today's housing reset actually means a correction, indicates they are quite fine with home prices falling, home sales cooling off, and construction pulling back significantly in order to achieve their mission. So he's reading into what they're saying, just as I am, and trying to assess, what their direction is going to be and what they're trying to achieve. Got a Morgan Stanley, well, it was strategist, I guess the T got cut off there. So months of supply has rarely increased as quickly as it has over the past 6 months. While we have a limited sample size of this kind of volatility, the size of this increase is normally associated with falling prices 12 months forward. So in fact, in the 34 instances in which months of supply increased by more than 1 month over any 6-month period, it was negative 12 months forward 88% of the time. So while there have been only 9 instances where months of supply have increased by more than 2 over a 6-month period, home prices were always lower 12 months later. So he's using some data here to say that the fact that it hasn't appreciated and that the inventory has picked up month over month, they're predicting a 12-month decline in prices. And lastly, the National Association of Realtors said on September 21st that rising mortgage rates have slowed home sales and prices. The median price of homes sold nationally cooled to 389.5 in August. So that's still up nearly 8% from August 2021, but the all-time high was 413 set in June. So they're already seeing a little bit of cooling. And again, this is market by market. This was a national thing. You know, this is what's going on nationally. So local markets are obviously going to be a little different. But I think it's important, you know, this isn't all doom and gloom stuff. This is, you know, how do we prepare for the next 12 months? What are we looking at? Well, as a company, you know, we've been looking at a lot of down payment assistance products and things like that, because there's going to be a lot of opportunity for home buyers that got priced out, that got basically kicked out of the market over the past couple years because they didn't have, you know, cash, they didn't have large down payments and things like that, to come back into the market and get into a position where they can be a homeowner. And from what we're seeing in our personal marketing, they're very, very responsive to these types of programs. They're interested in buying homes. They know that, you know, it could be a little bit of a pivotal time, but they're recognizing that this is their chance to get into the home with little skin in the game, you know, little down payment, no down payment. So, you know, if it does adjust a little bit or correct, that's not going to bite them as hard mentally, I think, because they didn't put in their life savings into this home. They got into it for nearly nothing. They can afford it, and the opportunity to refinance will come up over the course of the next 12 to 24 months. So at that point, it's only going to get better for them. So that's why this is why I want to discuss, you know, what can be construed as negative predictions about the housing market. It's not a negative prediction, it's just reality. This is what, you know, the Fed is looking to do. They want the housing market to correct. We've all been saying it for the past couple of years, and voila, we're in it. So, you know, our wish is becoming true, I guess, if you were one of the, you know, agents out there or the public saying we need the housing prices to go down and things like that. This is what it looks like. So it's just a matter as, you know, professionals, how do we educate people? How do we get people, you know, through this and continue our businesses? So with that said, you know, there comes a time in every real estate market cycle when REO transactions take center stage, and the possibility for this to become a reality in the U.S. housing market appears to be coming down the pipeline. A declining housing market doesn't necessarily mean less sales. Actually, it can be quite the opposite for those who listen to what the market is saying and make quick adjustments to their business plan to align with the changing market conditions. Homeowners with life events will still need to sell their homes. Renters will be looking for opportunities to get in the market with a good deal on a home, and home buying incentives, which may come around. So some of the incentives right now are the easier financing, the updated programs with these down payment assistance and 100% financing and things like that. That's just one incentive that's happening right now. Some distressed homeowners will refuse assistance and go into foreclosure. Others that get into negative equity situations may simply walk away from their homes with the thought that they can repurchase at a lower price. We saw a lot of this in the 2008 market crash. These homeowners were calling it a strategic default. You know, they had lost 20–30% in equity, and they just kind of threw in the towel and said, you know what, I'm going to try again here in a few years, let the bank take this house. I saw this happening a lot. If you were in that market back then, I'm sure you saw a lot of the same. It wasn't always distressed people. I saw investors letting go of homes by the dozen. So we may, you know, start to see some little things like that. I really don't think, I think that there was a lot of lessons learned for everybody during that housing crash. So I really don't think we're going to go down that path of how volatile that was. And so, but I do think that, you know, listening to what the Fed is saying about correcting the market, I mean, they're manufacturing that right now, clearly. with the rising interest rates. So I really think that some of this is going to come down the pipeline in 2023, and we just need to be prepared as realtors and make our adjustments. So I'm just going to do a quick kind of Q&A style. What is an REO? You know, how do we handle them as realtors? I know, you know, if you haven't been around for a decade in this business or more, you may not know much about REOs or what they are. We're already starting to see some on the buyer side as a company, and you know, our agents. You know, I just want to make sure everybody's informed about them in case you do see an REO listing of what to expect, how to prep your buyers, and basically how the REO transaction is probably going to go. So we'll start with what is an REO. So an REO is an acronym used by banks for real estate owned. Instead of an individual person or persons owning the property, like in a typical resale transaction, a bank owns the property. So the bank typically acquires title to its REO properties through the foreclosure process. However, REO properties may also be acquired through other means such as deed in lieu of foreclosure or tax sales. The ones you may have seen over the past few years, you might, if you're into that kind of thing, tax sales still do happen here and there. So that's something that you may have seen. Typically, those aren't, you don't see those listings in MLS. So is an REO sale the same thing as a foreclosure sale? It's not. The foreclosure sale is the sale of real property through the power of sale contained in the deed of trust. This is actually at an auction and generally triggered by a homeowner's inability to pay a mortgage loan secured by such deed of trust. An REO sale, on the other hand, is the sale of the property owned by the bank. So the REO sale is after the foreclosure process, is what this is saying. So the example would be Harry homeowner has mortgage loan secured by a deed of trust on his home. If Harry defaults on his mortgage loan, his lender may initiate the foreclosure process and eventually acquire the property at a foreclosure sale. Upon the lender's acquisition, the property becomes part of the lender's REO portfolio. The subsequent sale of the lender-owned property is commonly called the REO sale. So why are banks usually the highest bidder at a foreclosure sale? In California, foreclosure is commonly handled through a trustee's power of sale contained in the deed of trust that secures the homeowner's debt to the lender, not a court action, where the property is sold to the highest bidder at an auction open to the public. Excuse me. So at the trustee sale, the foreclosing lender may make a credit bid on the amount of its unpaid debt plus foreclosure costs, but the trustees typically requires any other accepted offer of anyone else attending the sale to be paid in the form of cash or equivalent. In the majority of cases, the property is underwater, so no one ends up bidding over the bank's credit bid. So more than likely it's foreclosing because there was distress on the homeowner. It's probably undervalued or underwater, meaning the home is worth less than what is owed on the property. So typically people that go to these foreclosure auctions, they're not going to bid on this kind of stuff because it doesn't make sense to them. What are the asset management companies? Asset management companies are companies that REO lenders may hire to oversee their sale of their REO properties. Some asset managers work in-house for a department or a division of the bank itself. Others work for an outside third-party asset management company. So what I've experienced in the past is, you know, some lenders have an asset management division within their company that they handle their own REOs that they foreclosed on, that they were servicing the loan on. Other ones sell them off to these, they'll sell them off, or they will have them handled by a third-party asset management company. In either instance, you would be dealing with an asset manager on the file. Why are REO properties sometimes characterized as distressed properties? Some REO properties are no different than other properties for sale and are generally in good condition. I've seen many of them like this. Others may be distressed as a result of simple neglect, deferred maintenance, intentional vandalism, either from the previous occupant, vandals, or squatters. Some things you may see in an REO property: deferred maintenance, missing fixtures, missing cabinets, missing appliances, missing flooring, missing HVAC units. That's pretty common. Sometimes the banks will come out and they'll put a big cage over the unit so it doesn't get stolen. Missing pool equipment, copper plumbing stripped out. This was a big one in the foreclosure crisis, 2008 to 2014. I don't know how many homes I went in that had all the copper plumbing stripped out of it. So those are some things you might see in some of these REOs. So if the price is super low, chances are something like this is probably going on. Or just general destruction, such as smashed out the walls, broken window panes, cement down the toilet, or damage caused by flooding the property by leaving the faucets on. I've actually witnessed that as well. There could be all kinds of things in there. So what are the legally mandated disclosures for REO sales? So this is a question that comes up a lot. The following is a list of legally mandated federal and state disclosures required for a typical REO sale in California. Natural hazard zone, so you got to get that NHD report. Megan's Law disclosure, lead-based paint if it applies, smoke detector statement of compliance, water heater bracing statement of compliance, methamphetamine laboratory activity order, condominium or other common interest development documents, agency disclosure, obviously. So what if an REO lender and listing agent provide no disclosures whatsoever? What disclosures should a buyer's agent give to the buyer anyway? So you may experience this on some REO sales. Again, there's a lot of them that are going to be different. If these become more prominent, you'll probably start to see certain agents, listing agents out there listing a lot of properties, and they may process these all the same depending on how their relationship is with the asset manager that is assigning these properties to them. So just remember that we still have a duty to disclose certain items. The following is a list of recommended disclosures for a buyer's broker and agent to provide to a buyer in the event the REO lender or listing agent does not provide. You're still going to want to provide the Megan's Law. You still have to provide the lead-based paint, combined hazards book, agency disclosure, your AVID, statewide buyer and seller, market conditions advisory, and the PRBS. So even if you cannot obtain the seller's signature, which is going to be the asset manager, or maybe the listing agent is refusing to sign their portions, have your buyer sign, put it in the file, and just make a note that the bank or asset manager would not sign the refused. So we still need to disclose these things to our buyers, though. This is still pertinent information. This is our duty to disclose these things. So, sounds like there's a lot of negative here. What would be the upside of working with REOs? So money to be made. Really, the sale process is not a whole lot different than a regular resale by the time it becomes an REO. There's a few little nuances, but there will be a lot of the general public looking to buy REO sales. So if you do any sort of save search pages on your IDX with websites, things like that, have an REO page promoting that, showing what the REO sales are for the area. It's a good way to get, it's a good lead generator. Service to clients, they're going to want this stuff. People like a deal. There's a lot of homeowner or potential homeowners, prospects out there that are looking to get into an REO because they know it's going to be listed a little lower. They don't mind a fixer if that's what it is. So knowing how to service these is a service to your clients, and showing that you understand the process and that you're willing and able to complete an REO transaction. It's only going to help you generate more business. Get your name out there, of course. Any kind of marketing, to get your name out there. So these are some upsides with getting to know REOs. So this is based on my experience. So if you don't know, I got licensed in about 2003. So I went through the boom, crash, boom, crash. I've been through many of them. But yes, I went through the market crash. I was in 2 markets at the time because I was licensed in Nevada and in California. So I experienced a lot of REO sales, a lot of short sales, a lot of REO sales. So I have done a ton of these things. So I just want to share some of my experience that I dealt with handling REO sales. And truthfully, I don't think it's going to change much. They may update some processing things, but for the most part, I think we're going to be dealing with a lot of the same. And we've already done a few this year that were REO sales, and really, from what I saw, nothing had changed with process or anything else. So pay attention to the MLS confidential remarks as far as how to submit an offer. Improperly submitting an offer may result in a no response from the listing agent. Include everything they ask for in your offer, including any supplemental bank addendums. So this is very similar to the past couple of years, and with all these multiple offer situations and things like that, these REO agents, they are going to be dealing with similar. They're going to probably have multiple offers. And if you don't submit exactly how they're saying they want your offer to be submitted, you may not get a response. So just keep that in mind. Prep yourself and your buyers that it may take a couple days for a response. That's just how it is. I'm sure your buyers are going to be excited. They're going to be asking you, hey, what's going on with my offer? You want to prep them ahead of time that these can move a little slower, especially in the beginning. So it may take a couple of days for them to even get back to you on what your offer looked like. The asset manager signs on behalf of the bank or the servicing company. So if you're wondering who signs for this stuff, it's going to be the asset manager. The listing agent communicates with the asset manager, who has lots of other assets they are also managing. This is partly why the response times can be long. So kind of like, a listing agent with a seller that's maybe a little slow to respond. It's the same thing with the with the REO, the asset manager. They're not just dealing with one home here. They have multiple homes on their plates. They're dealing with multiple listing agents. They might be dealing in multiple cities, multiple states. So they got a lot going on usually. So it does take a little while before they open up this file, or it can take a little while. The asset manager may or may not sign your original offer depending on their policy. They may or may not communicate verbally or via email through the listing agent regarding price and terms of your offer to come to an agreement instead of back and forth counter offers. So some of them just don't really do that. It's kind of through email. They'll say, okay, send us your response to our response via email, because we don't want to go back and forth on paper, signing all this stuff. They want to nail it down and then send the complete package over to you. I experienced that with a fair amount of them. They generally send you back what's called a bank addendum. I say generally, it's pretty much always. I don't know that I've ever done one that didn't send back a bank addendum, which is a version of the purchase agreement that the bank servicing company uses. If you get this bank addendum sent back to you, it means your offer has been chosen, but they may still accept new offers. I had that happen maybe once or twice, where we received the bank addendum back, and they ended up going with another offer that came in right after ours, or kind of right after they sent us the bank addendum. That really only happened to me like maybe once or twice. I don't know what other people have experienced with that, but for the most part, if they send you back the bank addendum, it means they're looking to move forward with your offer. You want to read through this bank addendum regarding closing dates, late fees, EMD return policy in the event the buyer defaults, allocation of costs regarding settlement fees. Many banks do not pay seller escrow or title fees. Many times they will agree to credit to cover these fees, though, if they have lesser offers. So they just have a policy in place. You have to remember that some of these asset managers are dealing with properties throughout the United States. So they have one policy in place to handle, all of these the best they can, all these other states and rules that these other states have. So, they just kind of have the same thing for every state. And I've found that a lot of them won't pay some of this stuff. But they will offer a credit. So, we talked about seller credits last week. They may say, okay, yeah, we'll take your 400 offer. And then you build in, your $10,000 in closing costs or something like that to cover some of these extra fees that are getting put onto the buyer that typically the seller would pay. This bank addendum is generally not signed by the asset manager at that time, but it will have the price and terms that have been agreed to. Sign and return promptly and stay in communication with the listing agent regarding a returned signed copy and escrow opening. So they kind of do it in reverse, at least most of them do, or the ones that I've always experienced. Typically on a counter offer, we have a seller signed counter offer that comes back to us. They may send this bank addendum over and it's not going to have the asset manager's signature yet. So they want you to sign it, send it back to them, and then they'll sign off on it. The asset manager will generally not complete properly or sign any disclosures, including TDS, or they will stamp it saying so. Sometimes they'll just rubber stamp it. Make a note of this in the file and still have your buyer sign. So anything they do send over to you, have your buyer sign it, even if it's like incomplete, and put it in the file, just as we kind of talked about before. Can you do inspections? Yes, you can still do inspections. I highly, highly, highly encourage doing inspections on these properties because you don't know what has happened. When people lose their homes, they're generally mad at the bank, and they do destructive things, semen down the toilets, pulling out the plumbing, things that you may not see with your eye. It needs to be scoped or something like that. Definitely encourage your buyers to get an inspection done. Plumbing lines, shutoff valves, fixtures, especially in dry regions. Many of these REOs have sat vacant for many, many months, or sometimes even years without the water running through the pipes. The seals in the fixtures tend to dry up, and once they start getting used again, they start leaking. I've seen this many times where we'll go and do the home inspection and everything seems to be okay. And then once the buyer moves in, then some of the shut-off valves under the sinks, they'll start leaking really bad. And it's because they dried up. That once run through during the inspection wasn't enough to start leaking. And, once they start running more and more water through, then we start seeing kind of the effects of all the gaskets and stuff within the fixtures drying up. So talk to them about this, have them prepared for, maybe the first month or so when you're in the home. Watch these areas to make sure that you don't have these issues. I've had that come up numerous times. Yes, you can still have a loan to purchase the home. Some of your REOs even have special first-time buyer incentives or owner-occupant requirements to encourage home ownership in some areas. Freddie Mac has the Home Path. Fannie Mae has the HUD program. You will need to register with HUD here in order to offer on HUD properties. You can create a free account whenever you want. They list all of their homes on that site and you can actually advertise them. So, and that's the HUD homes. The Home Path program, I probably like that one the best. They don't even take offers from investors for a period of time because they want to get a homeowner in there, an owner occupant. So if these start coming up into the area, definitely take a look at these. They're great programs. They even have special financing with them. Asset managers want to close by the end of the month to get the asset off their books. They are backed up at the end of the month. It can take 2 to 3 days to approve the settlement statement. and they will not close without it being approved. So give yourself some breathing room on these things. Get your lender on board with the closing timeline being, 2 or 3 days prior to what the contract date says, to avoid running late on closing. Waiting on the asset manager is a real life challenge, and they don't care that they are causing the delay in the closing. So, do your prep up front, talk to your lender about it. Yes, the close of escrow date's on the 30th, but I want to close on the 27th. Get those loan docs out early, because they're going to have to review some stuff on the asset management side to make sure everything is balancing, everything's correct, and they need to approve it before it closes. Asset managers have numbers they need to hit with regards to recouping as much money as possible for the investor. They may be working off a percentage. They will take less than the listed price. If your offer is less than that number, they will not negotiate lower in most cases, and will let the home sit on the market until the listing agent tells them it's time for a reduction. This is a protocol to show the investors that they have done their best to recoup as much loss as possible. I had an instance where we offered on a condo. I think the thing was like, I'll just say it was like 260,000 or something like that. We offered 240 on it. They rejected. Then a couple weeks went by, and I saw that they reduced the price down to 240. And then the buyer came in and offered a little less than 240, and then they actually took the offer, which was just mind-blowing that they did that, but that was their protocol, and it doesn't always make sense, but you just have to know that's generally how a lot of these asset managers work. They have the investors that they have to satisfy, and they'll say, we went through these protocol steps, and this is the best offer that we obtained with that. So a best practice to keep your buyers moving forward in the transaction is to have them check their emotions at the door. Buyer love letters, like all that kind of stuff, means nothing to any of these asset managers. This is a business transaction. They are purchasing a home at a discount. In many cases, they're dealing with robots basically on the other end. These asset managers are robots. They have a protocol. Listing agent will not jeopardize a relationship with the asset manager, and the asset manager is an employee of the bank or servicing company. They're going to be emotionless for the most part during the transaction. They're not looking to take advantage of a buyer or make things difficult for them, like you may have experienced with home sellers over the past couple of years, but they do operate on these protocols and policies, and everything is strictly numbers to them. So just try and get your buyers on board with this concept, and you should get through the transaction pretty easily. I really did not mind selling REOs for many years. It was probably 4, 5, 6 years where I almost exclusively dealt with these, because that's what the market was and that's what everybody wanted. You just have to get everybody on board and prepped and in that mindset of what they're going to deal with. Other than that, they're generally pretty smooth transactions, so don't be afraid of them. If you have one come up, usually in the private remarks in the MLS, it'll state that this is an REO or something similar to that. They're going to have their instructions on how to submit the offer. Don't be afraid to call the listing agent. If you have questions, they will answer. Most of them, at least, will answer any kind of questions you have, especially about credits, or if you want to ask them about what the asset manager will or will not pay as far as closing costs. The listing agent has that information. Don't be afraid to ask them. But again, ask me any questions about them. If you have one come up, you want to make an offer on it, so on and so forth. I like to talk about them. I can give you this handout if you want. But other than that, hopefully, you learned a little bit, and just prep up for, the 2023 market, because it does appear that they are wanting this correction to happen. They're not waiting to see if it's going to happen. It seems as if they're pushing the market in that direction. So I would expect things, or at least be very prepared for it to go down this road, and just adjust your marketing, just like we have. We have been picking up in sales, and a lot of it's due to us, changing our target market a little bit. And so, do the same, and you'll thrive through any sort of decline, for sure. So let me check the chat real quick. All right, I don't see anything, no questions. Cool. Hope everybody has a great week, and reach out if you need anything. Talk to you later.